reportedly wants to play in 2015, but do the Broncos want him now? That's the question. According to Bleacher Report's Jason Cole, sources close to the team said the Broncos are not sure if they want Manning back for another season. Manning has an upcoming physical, and the Broncos could fail the quarterback. At this point in his career, the Broncos could fail Peyton Manning for any reason, including the 4 neck surgeries that he has already had. And talking to sources close to the team, there's a big question about whether the Broncos want to bring him back for one more year. They're going to have to feel very comfortable about this. That, again, according to Jason Cole and Bleacher Report. The organization may not want Peyton Manning. Are you surprised by this, Skip?
Stephen A. Smith, I was shocked. I was dumbfounded when I read this. And again, we'll await some response from the Broncos. Not sure how much truth, but I know Jason Cole well enough. I believe where there's some smoke, there's got to be just a little bit of fire here. I think this whole concept is just plain silly. Unless you can tell me that Peyton Manning has recurring spine problems, disc problems, or a leg problem that he suffered in the San Diego loss last year, the torn quad, that could become career-threatening to him down the stretch of his career if there's much left. If you tell me it's just injuries where he just can't play anymore, I get it. If it's not that, hey, I can show you 4 or 5 teams that I think would still bid for the services even for 1 year of one Peyton Manning. Now, he did have, by his standards, an off year last year, especially down the stretch. But let me point out that that off year included him finishing second in touchdown passes, just one behind Andrew Luck, 39-40. And he finished third in overall QBR behind Tony Romo and Aaron Rodgers. No shame there. And he finished 4th in yards passing behind Drew Brees, Roethlisberger, and Andrew Luck. Okay. So is that a shamefully bad? No. Who wouldn't take those numbers right now? So to me, if in fact John Elway has some frustration, here's what this is my psychological read of John Elway. Remember, he was a former great player, an all-time great quarterback, and I'm sure he was so deeply frustrated by a 24-13 home playoff loss to Andrew Luck and the Indianapolis Colts that he starts to think, gee, if I had been playing, we would have won that game. Because most of the great players, starting with Michael Jordan, tend to sort of impose their greatness on the team and on the players playing for them and think, I wouldn't have let that happen. How did we let that happen? So what did he do? He fired his coach. They have a new defensive coordinator in Wade Phillips, and I think that's going to be a real upgrade and a big move. I think that the head coach will be an upgrade. So I'm going to look at a running game that came together down the stretch. C.J. Anderson, Ronnie Hillman, Juwan Thompson. I like all those guys. I think they're still set up to be a very good team and a contending team next year, even though Peyton will play at age 39. But if they don't want him, or is it possible that Peyton would be alienated by this report, that he'd be a little stung himself? Maybe he would be a little reticent to return to Denver. I don't know. I'm just reading into it now because I don't know how much truth there is here. But again, I can list, and I will in just a minute if you want me to, I can list 5 teams that I think would jump at the chance to have Peyton Manning next year, even for 1 year at age 39.
Well, I think you're looking at this all wrong. You're thinking about the greatness of Peyton Manning. You're thinking about how effective he was last year, even though he sort of tailed off near the end of the season. Particularly, he was never the same to me once he got beat up by the St. Louis Rams. They relied heavily on a running game over the next 3 or 4 weeks with C.J. Anderson coming in there and playing effective football, not to mention that Peyton just didn't look the same. And when they lost that game to Indianapolis Colts 24-13, he only threw for 211 yards. He didn't have much zip on his passes, only threw for 1 touchdown, missed a lot of throws he normally would have missed. And then in the aftermath of all of that, we heard that he had a severe quad injury.
He did.
And so because we heard about the injury and then we dissected how that could have a profound impact on your effectiveness in throwing the football, et cetera, et cetera. But the thing that I think you're missing, Skip Bayless, is this. Moolah. Dollars. That's what you have to think about in the hard cap world of the National Football League. Peyton Manning's scheduled to get paid $19 million next year. With the $2.5 million bonus, you also have, he's a $21.5 million cap hit. Maybe that's what John Elway is thinking about. Because in this day and age, that's what you're forced to think about. Now, I understand the greatness of Peyton Manning. That almost seems sacrilegious to bring stuff like that up. But if you have questions about his health, if you have questions, more importantly, Skip, about his durability because of his fledgling health that took place in the aftermath in the latter part of last season, if you're thinking about a guy that was that way at 38, who's about to turn 39, and you're questioning his ability to really absorb inevitable punishment, what you don't want to do is find yourself in a situation where you've got a guy that's costing you about $21.5 million in cap space and prohibiting your ability to go out there and get quality guys to add in his absence when you're questioning whether or not he's going to be available for you in the latter part of the season. I don't think there's any question that John Elway wants Peyton Manning. You signed him to a 5-year, $96 million deal for a reason. You know how great he is. We know how great he has been. But the drop-off that we saw in the last part of the season was incredibly precipitous. We saw it. It was evident. It was undeniable. And there were legitimate questions. We just stopped asking them once we heard about the quad injury. But before the quad injury, we were like, who is this guy? What happened to him? I've never seen Peyton Manning like that. This is unbelievable. So you combine that with Father Time, it's a legitimate question for Elway and the Broncos to have, although I don't believe that Elway is going to jump ship on them. I just think that it's something that you scratch your head about and say, we got to think about this.
Maybe you make the point that, is it possible Elway would just say, could you take a little discount here? Could we reduce this a little bit? That's possible to me.
That is possible. That is possible. Or if you really, really, really are doubting whether you want to do this, let me know. I don't think that John Elway turns away a healed, meaning quad, healed Peyton Manning.
I don't either.
Who's vibrant about playing football and saying, I don't think I want you back. I can't see that. If John Elway is doing that, it's because somewhere along the way, whether it's due to health reasons or Peyton Manning's desire to endure the physical stress that's brought down upon him, there are questions in Peyton Manning's mind as to whether or not he wants to go.
Okay, so let's do the hypothetical. Let's say Elway's done with Peyton Manning. He just didn't see enough down the stretch, healthy or not healthy. What are you going to do? Go with Brock Osweiler? Is that what you're going to do next year?
Well,
you're going to draft somebody?
First of all, a lot of guys like him. Secondly, he's been learning under Peyton Manning the last 3 years.
Good luck with that.
Well, listen, you could say good luck with it. Of course, he's not going to measure up to Peyton Manning. But I keep telling you, you're about a win now kind of guy. And I get that. Some guys in the NFL are thinking towards the future. Now, I'm not saying Osweiler is the answer. Please don't get me wrong. I'm not going to be that stupid. I'm just simply saying to you that you have to think about life beyond Peyton Manning when you saw what you saw from Peyton Manning those last few weeks.
Okay, so to sum this up, and again, I'm being totally hypothetical. Let's just say that Denver decides not to bring Peyton back, and he is a free agent. If I'm the Houston Texans, I jump at him for 1 year. If I'm the Buffalo Bills and Rex, I would jump at him for 1 year. If I'm the St. Louis Rams, I might just take a flyer for 1 year.
I do not believe for 1 second that Peyton Manning is going to leave the Denver Broncos and go play for somebody else. I think Peyton Manning is going to play or he's going to retire. I don't believe that Peyton Manning is the kind of guy that wants to play for a third team in his NFL career. He didn't want to play for a second. He was left no choice by Irsay. This is a guy that doesn't want to be moved around. He doesn't want to be perceived as a mercenary.
And unless he took it personally that they cut bait with him before he was ready to leave.
But again, I don't believe that John Elway would do that. I believe that John Elway, if he cuts bait with Peyton Manning, is because Peyton Manning said, I really don't want to do this anymore. I think either he's going to keep Peyton Manning for next year or we're going to have an announcement, a press conference with Peyton Manning announcing that I'm going to retire from the game of football.
Mentioned was value on Peyton Manning's contract. Manning's cap value for 2015 is $21.5 million, only behind Tony Romo and Drew Brees. Coming up next, we're talking basketball. Charles Barkley has a message for the general manager of the Houston Rockets. Only the way that Barkley can deliver a message. We will share that with you after the break. First Take back in just a few moments.